As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner, YouGov, offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more. The headline here, EA signals gaming boom, extending run with upbeat annual forecast. And the headline basically says that they adjusted their revenue forecast above analysts' estimates, betting that demand for its titles, including FIFA and Apex, would stay strong even as COVID restrictions ease. There's general stats about, consumer spending on gaming going up, obviously. But this is a big adjustment, I think, where they went from an estimate of 6.6 billion to 7.3 billion, which is not an insignificant jump in terms of guidance. I don't know. I'm curious to get your thought on, have you seen this big of a sort of an upwards adjustment? And the second point here is a lot of the discussion was around very strong growth in Apex, which you wouldn't think, considering that the game's 2-3 years old now, but that they're very bullish on the future of Apex as well. So just curious to get your thoughts, Jeff, on EA in general, but also this move in terms of upping their guidance.
Yeah, I think, I hadn't get a chance to look at the call, so I don't know, or dig into the numbers. So I don't know if the guidance, it might be a scenario where they're increasing the guidance also because they closed some of these acquisitions. So they might not have included like the Glue Mobile numbers in yet, and maybe this is the first time they're giving guidance with that, because you're right, that $600 million jump is a lot higher than what you would normally see. Like a lot of times you'll see, each quarter throughout the year they'll kind of walk it up like 100 or even 150 million, but to do 600 million, particularly this early in the year, I think, because they just finished this would have been their fiscal Q1. Mm-hmm. Or no, did they just they just finished their fiscal year, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it would be,
and this is for their full year revenue, right? For fiscal 2022.
Yeah. So it's a little early in the year for them to really be doing that. So I imagine it's a little bit of kind of just adding different stuff to the pie, but that's not to take away. I mean, they're like you said, Apex is doing really well. Has had, I don't even know if we should call it a resurgence. It's kind of just maintained, been steady, over the last 2 years. While everyone thought it was dying, I think it's had a pretty nice content cadence. And I guess this goes back to our earlier point we were talking about Ubisoft. People forget now, it took several quarters really for the Respawn team to get comfortable with the live service game. I mean, they were very candid early on after Apex came out that they were overwhelmed and they kind of didn't really know how to make a live service game. They were used to, that team had done more like boxed copy games, and they had done Titanfall, which, those games didn't really have a live service component. So Apex was very different for them. So it's not an easy skill to run a live service. And I'm glad now that Vince and his team have gotten to the point where it seems like they're like a well-oiled machine, because that's great for EA and it's great for the game and great for the space. Other than that, I mean, the only other thing I would point out from the EA results or EA's kind of recent activity, they've been super active on the M&A front, which I think is interesting. I don't know exactly what that says, whether that means we're kind of in the late innings of kind of the cycle, or if they just see so much opportunity that they're taking advantage of it. But they've acquired Glue, they've acquired Codemasters, and they just acquired some publisher, like baseball game kind of publisher. So I think that's notable.
Can I tie two stories together? What do you think is the likelihood that someone at Ubisoft, right, like management at Ubisoft, looked at EA's sort of performance here and the, you know, all the talking about Apex and live service and all the sort of patting on the back that EA does around that, and said, you know what, we need to do something about this. Like and that was sort of a lot of the genesis around the messaging around free to play and live service on their end. Like, do you think, how much attention do you think Ubisoft's paying to other publishers, frankly?
I think they're all paying a lot of attention. I mean, there definitely is, you know, strategy divisions and competitive intelligence and, you know, all these inner workings between the companies. You know, I don't think Ubisoft's announcement was because of EA's announcement. You know, they wouldn't make that kind of strategic change, obviously, in like 24 hours. But I am sure that a lot of these companies are looking at the success of Warzone and saying, okay, Call of Duty just added a free-to-play component, and not only did their bookings grow and their revenue they brought in more players, and it didn't. Not only did it not cannibalize the boxed copy sales, they actually grew more than ever before. So it actually, I'm trying to tie it back to the Assassin's Creed example, but it shows that by making your game free to play, you actually can sell more copies of your game, which is sort of antithetical to what you would think.
Yeah, and you know, obviously, this is why Ubisoft, you know, seems to be wanting to make that pivot. But I do think it's interesting. EA, in spite of all the backlash, right, that they get around loot boxes and pay to win, and this article also mentions FIFA, right? And FIFA got so much hate around pay to win and having to pay for like the best players. And despite all of the pushback and all the noise, right, that you get on Reddit and in places where gamers complain, they're still like producing, they're still a juggernaut in terms of generating results. What is like, I'm just, it's a bit of a tangent, but I'm curious what you think of sort of the impact of backlash against some of EA's more egregious like moves. And it seems to be no impact.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, FIFA is basically a license to print money, right? That's, you know, the hands down best franchise, I think, in all of gaming. Just the Ultimate Team model is the perfect model for modern day gaming as a live service, and it's a massively popular game. It's in and of itself, you know, the individual FIFA is probably the second most popular upfront paid title. And then you obviously add on the live service component. But I'm trying to think what your other question. Oh, the impact. I mean, you did see, I think a lot of what we're seeing, the success of EA now is kind of because of some of the lumps they took, you know, with some of the backlash. I mean, they did make a really good Star Wars game in the last year out of Respawn that didn't have microtransactions, was single player, and sold really well. And I think that was a direct result of the kind of the wrist smacking that they got from what they did with Battlefront. You know, even Apex Legends, I think the way they launched it, they talked, you know, making it free to play and not having a big marketing campaign. I think a lot of that was due to some of the fan reaction to Battlefield. So, you know, they have learned from some of the things that they've gotten wrong in the past.
Cam says, I'll need some Apex lessons, Paul. I tore it up on PS4, but I haven't put the time to learn controls on PC. Feels so alien compared to other PC shooters I've played. Apex has incredible movement mechanics that separates it from every other shooter. Cam, I'd be happy to.
I'm a Valorant player. I could teach you Valorant one day, Cam.
we were actually just totally rolling a bunch of Predator players in the new 3v3 mode over the weekend. So happy to play sometime, Cam. And Cam says, well said, Jeff. Would love EA to move away from their MTX microtransactions. So damn successful. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. Not when they're putting up numbers like this. And
not
maybe
for sports,
Chris,
at least. No way. I mean, that's the whole business. They just never happen.
And Chris makes I think the right point here, right? To Cam's point, which is there's a larger world of buying power outside of Twitter, outside of Reddit, outside of all the places where people complain. Like Twitter is an especially special kind of cesspool. I just don't think, they're, it's interesting because none of the backlash has affected their business. None, right? Like no amount of hate really affected their business, which I find fascinating. And fundamentally, if we go back to the Ubisoft example, it's because EA has been making pretty good games, right? Like when it comes down to it.
Because I love to play devil's advocate here, the only counterexample I'll give you is Battlefield. The last Battlefield, there was a lot of backlash, mostly around the marketing of it, and it did flop. Now it also flopped.
I agree.
It wasn't a good game. It was delayed, and it didn't come out with the Battle Royale ready, and it came out after Call of Duty, which was a lot better, yada, yada, yada. There was a lot of reasons, but that did hurt them. So
to be clear, as much as people, I agreed with the hate on the Battlefield marketing. The marketing was terrible, but Battlefield 5 is still a fundamentally great game. It's a great game, and it's unfortunate that it didn't do better than it did. It never needed a battle royale mode. They should have never focused on that. Like it's one of those games where they should have focused on what Battlefield does best. And I think it's really unfortunate.
Do you have high hopes for the next one? Do you think it has any chance to sort of, I don't want to say dethrone Call of Duty, but will it be close to Call of Duty in terms of sales?
Battlefield has always been the better game than Call of Duty. So I always have high hopes for Battlefield. Like Battlefield games to me are just fundamentally better shooters than Call of Duty. The engine's better. The battles are more epic. Like it's a more, for me, I speak for myself, but I think it's a more fun game. If they don't mess up the marketing, I think it definitely has a shot at making a run at Call of Duty. Battlefield, I think, never captured the console market in the way Call of Duty has. Call of Duty is a simpler game. It's a smaller game, right? Like because the maps are smaller, the servers are smaller, like it's more console friendly. Battlefield, because of how epic they tried to make the game, because of the size of the battles, the number of players, it's always been more PC focused, right? You needed a powerful gaming PC to run that game well. And so I think Battlefield will always be smaller than Call of Duty. Battlefield may make, like EA may make the best Battlefield game ever. I just don't think it's going to touch Call of Duty from a numbers standpoint because Call of Duty will always have the console kiddies. Always will. I don't think that's going away. Cam says, oh, no chance they'll stop. Extremely frustrating when every game mode is a copy paste, but Ultimate Team grows and grows. Wish they use the revenue to help support other game modes. Yeah. You always hope that with any live service or microtransaction based game that they're putting the money back into the game, but maybe not always the case. Salute to the boomers on the chat and Battlefield 1942 on PC. There you go, Chris. Bad Company 2 remaster when? Cam, there's so many great Battlefield games. That's just the reality. And Desert Combat, man, that was a great mod. Yes, I agree.